The behind-the-scenes pictures released by the White House indicate the frenzy of diplomacy that has consumed Washington. And no less important for a president preoccupied with his image, it shows Donald Trump as the conductor. European leaders gathered around him, showing deference, trying to glean whether this is a deal that might actually fly. Notably, a map of the Russian advances in eastern Ukraine was positioned prominently to one side, underlining that territorial concessions would have to be on the table. On his favourite TV morning show today, Trump made clear his security guarantees did not include a single soldier.
What kind of assurances do you feel like you have that it won't be American boots on the ground defending that border?
Well, you have my assurance, and I'm president, and I'm just trying to stop people from being killed.
But he was quick to suggest that British and European troops are ready to step into the security vacuum.
We've got the European nations, and they'll front-load it, and they'll have some of them, France and Germany, a couple of them, UK. They want to have, boots on the ground. Not in. I don't think it's going to be a problem, to be honest with you. I think Putin is tired of it. I think they're all tired of it.
Only briefly did he concede his optimism in Putin might be misplaced.
Possible that he doesn't want to make a deal.
And then he joked the Nobel Peace Prize wasn't his only goal.
I want to try and get to heaven if possible. I'm hearing I'm not doing well. I hear I'm really at the bottom of the totem pole. But if I can get to heaven, this will be one of the reasons.
There was a revealing hot mic moment before talks began yesterday, seeming to confirm that Trump genuinely feels Putin will sign up to a deal as some kind of favor.
I think he wants to make a deal for me. You understand? As crazy as it sounds.
But conflicting with that optimistic view is the grim reality of continuing assaults by Russian forces on Ukrainian apartment blocks, as well as gas storage facilities, lighting up the sky over the city of Kremenchuk. After his Alaska success, President Putin was visible in meetings at the Kremlin today, while his foreign minister Sergei Lavrov implied that no meeting with Zelensky was imminent, saying it would need significant preparation. That confirms the biggest single question remains whether Trump at the Alaska summit had accurately assessed the Russian leader's motives and intentions.
Good afternoon, everybody.
But at the White House today, the spokeswoman was clear. Putin has promised to meet Zelensky.
President Trump spoke with President Putin by phone, and he agreed to begin the next phase of the peace process, a meeting between President Putin and President Zelensky.
Did Putin promise to do a meeting with Zelensky, a direct meeting, in the coming weeks?
He has.
As European leaders met again today, this time by a video conference, there is clear relief that any transatlantic fracture over Ukraine has been averted, at least for now. Certainly the disastrous diplomatic implosion of 6 months ago has been set aside. President Zelensky can return home having successfully mended fences at the Trump White House. But he still faces some agonizing decisions on surrendering Ukrainian territory to the Russian invader. Robert Moore, News at 10, Washington.
Well, let's discuss what a security force or security guarantees might look like with Harry here and Dan at the White House. Dan, maybe you first. You know, obviously we've debated for so long this question of US security guarantees. President Trump seems to be suggesting there will be some kind of US backing for a security guarantee. But what crucially is he willing to provide potentially, and what is he not willing to provide?
Well, he's absolutely categorical about no US boots on the ground, as he's put it. I think, you know, he's made it plain throughout the election campaign and since then that he doesn't want to get the US involved in another costly foreign war with the experience in Afghanistan and Iraq. So that's, I think, a red line for him in the White House. However, that doesn't mean that there's no US involvement at all. This morning, he mentioned the possibility of US aircraft being involved, suggesting that the US has aircraft and air capability that the rest of Europe simply couldn't offer. And then there are things like logistics, intelligence, long-range missile capability and missile defense as well. So there's a whole suite of different options that he could put in place to support a European peacekeeping force, which I think is how he is seeing this, French, German, and potentially British. But we still don't really have any idea of how that would work in practice. Is it going to be sort of under some sort of Ukrainian umbrella? Is it going to be divided up into different zones, almost akin to sort of Berlin after the end of the Second World War? We just don't know. So there's a lot of things that are yet to be worked out in terms of this coalition of the willing, as it is sometimes. But one thing I think the Europeans are very insistent on is there has to be an American deterrence backing all this up, a security guarantee that would mean if there is an escalation with Russian forces, if they decide to invade, or if British or French troops are caught up in some sort of exchange of fire, that they would have the backing of the US ultimately as the ultimate deterrence, that this doesn't spiral further and Russia doesn't move forward in Ukraine.
OK, Dan, thank you very much indeed. Well, let's discuss all this with Harry. I mean, listen, US deterrent sounds great, but if they're not there and they're not on the ground, who knows what that really means and how far it would go. As I understand it from what the president said today, it's us that would be actually on the ground. So what's your understanding of what, from our perspective, that means and doesn't mean?
Well, there were more meetings today between European and other world leaders about what the government is calling a reassurance force of British and other troops to be deployed inside Ukraine at the point at which there is a ceasefire and some sort of peace deal is agreed. Now, what I'm told by sources in government is that that would not mean British troops sort of patrolling the front line, keeping the peace. It would primarily be British troops training Ukrainian troops inside Ukraine, repairing battlefield equipment. It would likely mean RAF jets patrolling Ukrainian skies along with other countries as well, and some sort of presence, security presence in the sea. Demining was one of the activities that was suggested we might get involved in by someone today. European countries have been talking about this for some time. The UK Chief of Defence Staff has been in Washington today meeting with his counterparts to try and figure out exactly what these US security guarantees look like. But look, if we do get a ceasefire, if there is some sort of peace deal agreed, I'm told the plan would be to get these troops deployed very quickly into Ukraine, potentially within a week.
OK, so we might be, theoretically, only weeks away from potentially having training forces in Ukraine, jets in the sky, potentially minesweepers or whatever offshore. What happens if Putin rolls over the border again? I mean, we're not going to run away, I presume. So does that mean we're at war with Russia in that circumstance?
Well, I think it depends a lot on exactly what the level of US backing is for this so-called coalition of the willing. You know, we've heard a lot this week about so-called or Article 5 style guarantees. Well, what exactly does that mean? You know, as Dan was saying, if there was something from Russia that provoked a response from British and European forces, would the US get involved in that sort of response? I mean, that, you know, it's not clear at this stage. The government was at pains today to point out that lots of these announcements they've made today are not new. They say they've been talking about sending British troops and European troops to Ukraine for some time now if there is a peace deal. Ministers have been talking about the growing threat from Russia. They've been talking about moving our armed forces to what they call war-fighting readiness. I think what is perhaps quite stark today is that almost all of a sudden feels a lot more real. Yeah. And it feels like we could be at that stage in the next few weeks.
Okay, Harry, sobering stuff. Thank you very much indeed. Now, at the heart of the argument over territory in any kind of peace deal will be the future of Ukraine's much-discussed Donbass area, short for the Donetsk River Coal Basin. It is a coal-rich, industrialized region. This is the current front line of the Russia-Ukraine war. Alongside security guarantees for Ukraine, it's obviously territory that the Russians want. One proposal discusses Ukraine giving up Luhansk and the eastern region of Donetsk, which together make up the Donbass. Those who fled Donetsk to the relative safety of Kyiv can't bear to contemplate that.
Sasha's former life exists only on a bookshelf in an album of photographs, which are unlikely to be replicated. She's from Donetsk, which is under Russian occupation, and which seems certain to stay that way, whatever negotiations lie ahead.
I know that my region and my town will be always integral part of Ukraine. And I think that it will be such a betrayal just to neglect their feelings and their desires and their rights to be Ukrainians. If we give up our territory, I think that it will be a disaster just in the nearest future.
Thousands fought and died to keep Ukrainian land in Ukrainian hands. The reminders are all around in the capital Kyiv, which Maria must now call home. She too is from Donetsk. Even as fighting continues, the prospects for a peace deal may have edged closer. But even if agreed, living in peace with Russian neighbours seems a very long way off.
Stop this war. Say sorry, really sorry. They fixed my country, fixed houses, fixed cities, and a lot of years, maybe, but not now.
Ask her if her region should be sacrificed for peace, or if troops should carry on with the war, and her answer is painful to say and to hear.
It's so hard, but war for years. Because if we give to Russians, it's the same. Because we don't have normal life, we don't have a peace.
The two women are friends, but living in internal exile.
I think of the word justice. I just want justice for every single Ukrainian who lost their houses, their parents, their relatives, or just this feeling of freedom.
Even if the days ahead do bring an end to the fighting, many Ukrainians will struggle to accept the terms. Ian Woods, News at 10.